So let's get started. So thank you everyone so much for coming to our webinar tonight. So from school to dream job. So here we've got on our panel Ryan Gibson and Mark Fox. We did have Pamela Waghorn, but unfortunately she was unwell today, so she couldn't come. But we've got two super experts here to help you. And I just know that I'll sum up your jobs badly if I try to. So could I just get you, Ryan and Mark, to give us an intro about what you do? Mark, you kick us off.
Thanks, Mariette, and hi everybody. It's great to be here tonight. Really enjoyed the last one, and looking forward to tonight as well. Hope it's helpful for everybody. I'm an ex-careers advisor, an ex-careers leader, and done sort of various other careers jobs. But my job at the moment is working in the northeast, in the region of Northumberland down to County Durham, supporting about 40 schools with their careers programs and kind of consulting and advising with them really about how they can provide the best service for their students.
Awesome, man. Ryan?
Good evening, everyone. Really delighted to be with you and lovely to see so many young people with us as well. My name's Ryan Gibson. I lead on careers provision across Academies Enterprise Trust, which is a big group of schools. Our school furthest north is in Middlesbrough, further south on the Isle of Wight, and we've got 58 schools in between. So really glad to be with you tonight.
Awesome, thank you guys. I should just say before I start asking questions that I'm quite rural where I am right now, and if my internet completely dies, my colleague Emily, who's also here, will just take over. So if I disappear, don't worry, the show will go on. So let's kick off. So question for, let's go with Ryan first. So what would you say a teen's role is in their own career planning?
Well, I think as kind of half the teens in the audience have sort of got a career path and plan in mind, I think the best thing I could say is that your role is to be as proactive as possible, to have a think about what it is you enjoy doing. So what is it, the things you like doing and why? So what are your interests? And then explore those. What are you good at and how do you know you're good at it? That's your kind of, I suppose, your abilities. And then what don't you like doing and why? And use that to kind of determine your passion. So be really proactive in understanding yourself, I think. And then once you've got a better understanding of what you like doing, start to explore what that could mean in terms of a job role. Don't be confined by job role though. Think about job sector, think about connected jobs. And if you've got no idea about a job, think about your skills. So what is it that you're good at? What are your kind of personal abilities? What are your personal attributes? What's your character like? What does that lend itself to in terms of things that you might be interested in? And then pursue and explore those.
Yeah, and Mark, would you add anything to that?
Oh, I've been taking notes myself, actually. Thanks, Ryan. No, I would absolutely agree in terms of being proactive, and it's sort of it's about taking control of your own life really, and starting to make that transition into adulthood, and starting to find things out for yourself. And it doesn't have to matter if you don't know. But it does matter if you don't then do anything about that. So I think the process of research, whilst it might sound boring at first, actually, once you get into researching job roles and sectors, I would lay money on the fact that you'd find a lot of it quite interesting, because there'd be a lot of things about jobs and sectors that you never knew. And a lot of things that you've never come across before. And actually, once you start reading these things, you do get a sort of gut reaction about whether you like something or not. So whichever way you look at it, the more you find out, the more you will learn about yourself and the more you'll want to find out.
So keeping really open-minded. Yeah, Ryan?
Yeah, no, just to build on what Mark was saying, I think if you sit back and wait for the opportunity to come to you, you'll find that opportunity probably passes you by. So you have to go out and seize the opportunity. And if it's not there for you, you have to go and find it. You have to find where it does exist, and you have to take advantage of it. And that's really easy to say and then really hard to do in practice. And so it's also sometimes really hard to think about what career or job you want to do. You know, I think I said this the last time, but somebody once said to me, trying to imagine what job you want to do is like trying to imagine a color that hasn't yet been invented. It just messes with your head. You can't quite get there. You have to, in a sense, you have to see it to want to be it. So you have to kind of engage in that proactive nature of securing an opportunity.
Yeah, and on that note of like finding out what you're good at and kind of developing that self-awareness while you've still got so many options ahead of you, how can, as a teen, how can you become more self-aware? Like what kind of resources might be out there to help you? Which I don't know, Mark, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things you can do. I mean, there's certainly some great career websites that are out there. They have come on a long way. I know people of a certain age will sort of laugh and be a little bit scornful about some of the older programs and software that were out there, but they have developed quite a lot. And some of these websites are based on psychological tests, and they're looking very much at your personality and your abilities. And you can gradually start finding out more about yourself, and slowly start that sort of process of linking that with jobs. But it's still always a good idea to talk to the people who know you, because if they're people that you trust and people that you get on with, and family and friends and that kind of thing, actually there's no reason why you can't have that serious conversation and say, do you think I'm kind of suited to this? Do you think I'm that sort of person? Or if they're the right people that you can talk to about those things, then I would have those conversations.
Yeah, and Ryan, is there anything else teens can do to work out what they're good at and also what they're not?
Yeah, I think the first thing is not to panic, and not to do that thing that we all do and think about all the things we're not good at, and try to actually sit down and reflect on what it is we are good at. And if you need some help with that, one of the websites that we use I Could quite a bit in our school. So we look at different career videos. There's loads of careers videos on there, people talking about their job role, and that can spark an interest or a bit of excitement. But there's also a kind of a personality type quiz on there, which is quite good, called the Buzz Quiz. And that allows you to answer a series of questions. It forces you to make some decisions. It will give you a code. That code translates to an animal. And that animal type then translates to jobs you might like to investigate or explore. It also tells you which other people are of a similar animal type. And of course, you might agree or disagree with it, but it gives you a starting point. So I think just picking a place to start and exploring from there is probably the best advice. And if you're really not sure where to start, rather than thinking about that massive question of what job do I want to do, maybe think about some of the issues that exist in the world, the problems that you see in the world, and think about how you might like to solve them, and then start to explore from that point. What does that mean in terms of skills? What does that mean in terms of jobs? What does that mean in terms of progression pathways?
Yeah, so developing that self-awareness first really sets you up to to answer the questions of are all these roles right for me, and what skills could I develop throughout my career.
Yeah, I think if you think about how much energy you put into booking a holiday, you go and you think about what it is you like, and that determines whether you might want a beach holiday or a skiing holiday or an adventure holiday or whatever. You then go and research, don't you? You research how you're going to get there. You look at cost, you look at accommodation, but as you're making those, and you look at all the different reviews, and as you're making a decision, you're constantly referring back to what is it that you will like best. So it's the same in making a kind of a careers-based decision. You've got to understand what it is you might be interested in, who you are as a person, and what you might like to do or explore further before you can really make those kind of fully informed decisions to know whether an opportunity is right for you or not.
Yeah, totally. And I think you both touched on it a bit already. I think it was Mark who said that you can ask other people like ask people close to you what they feel your skills are. But on that note, what is both the role of, what would you say is the role of the parent and then also a teen's school in helping form their career decisions? Mark, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I think it's an easy thing to say, probably a harder thing to do, but I think it's important for parents and carers to really listen to where their son or daughter is coming from in terms of what they're saying, because it might not chime with what they want for them. But actually, in my experience of working in schools, you know, the young people do often research things. They have thought about things. They do have ideas, and sometimes they do differ from what their parents might want for them. So I think the first thing is to really listen to what their son or daughter is saying, and to kind of, to an extent, to go with it, not to or to try not to impose any ideas on them. But at the same time, obviously, it could reach that point where you know, there is a genuine concern, and actually, you know, perhaps looking at your watch and thinking, look, you are getting towards school leaving time. You do need to start making decisions soon, and that might be where a bit of gentle nudging is needed, and just finding out, you know, kind of where the barrier might be to actually making decisions, because I think a lot of students, particularly in school, when it comes to that decision making, they're so used to being in school and going back to school every year. It can be quite a big thing to suddenly decide on something else.
Yeah, I would agree. I think parents are great if they can act as a guide, not to always necessarily know the predetermined end point, but to be able to help their child navigate their way as they kind of explore the different options that are available, carving out time to talk about things, as Mark said. Making time to have those, I guess, what we would call career conversations, but just sitting down and looking at information together, exploring it together, and then maybe behind the scenes as well, just visiting different websites so that you can understand some of the different pathways and routeways that are available, the different qualification types, and just so that you've got a bit of an informed picture, so that you can then signpost your son or daughter to other sources of information as well. And also, I would say a parent can be in touch with their child's school, just to understand the support that the school is putting in place, and they can get support from there as well.
And on that, if a teen is a bit shy here, or if they've never met, perhaps if they've been having remote school for so long that they don't know all the resources that are out there, what's the best way for a teen to work with their school to get help in forming their careers plan as well? Ryan, what would you say?
Yeah, well,
Mark, can
Shall
you?
I? Yeah, shall I talk? Hopefully you can hear, and maybe just can't. You just went quiet a bit there, Ryan. Yeah. So one thing. I mean, if I could mention another couple of things that might help. The first thing is, if you have a look at the school website, there should be some information on there about what the careers offer is in that school. The government have laid out some quite strict guidelines that all schools need to display certain information about their careers program, about the support that's on offer for students in different year groups. And it's like everything else, school websites will vary enormously from one school to the next. Some might just have literally one single basic page with the statutory information on there. which should still give you a good inkling as to the support available. Others will have really gone to town on their websites and put lots of links for students to follow, and maybe even interactive activities and things like that. But either way, every school should have quite clearly marked on somewhere on their website what they offer. If there aren't links on there is an organisation called the National Careers Service, and they have a very good website with a lot of support on offer for young people and for adults. It's an all-age service through that website. There's information on jobs. There's over 800 job profiles on there, all divided into sectors. And there's also the facility for one-to-one support, either by the telephone or through a web chat or email or text, just about every method of communication you can think of. So that's kind of always there for everybody, regardless of what the level of careers service is like at your school.
Nice one. So your kind of first port of call is to see what your own school offers, and then if you want to get some extra help, or if you want more help than what your school is providing, yeah, the National Career Service is a really great place to look, isn't it? Nice one. And Ryan, would you have anything to add to that? I think your connection seems to be fine again. So.
Great, I'll try. The good thing is, when I managed to kind of reconnect, I heard what Mark was saying, and it's everything I think that I would have said. The only thing I would add to it is, if you have an idea of the destination you want to move on to, then potentially you can always contact that organisation and speak to them to say, how can I best prepare myself for a place at your college, your sixth form, your university? What kinds of experiences should I be gathering? What is it that you look for? And where could I access support around that? So you can also have the conversation that way as well.
Right, so it's all about finding all these resources, all of which are still basically online resources, and even through your school. So even, I know schools are about to go back, but even if you're at home, there's plenty that you can do to research, even before things fully open up again. And on that note, actually, I thought it would be interesting to find out what you guys have to say about how the kind of work experience, the world of work experience and the world of career planning has changed, and kind of how it will look for the rest of the year. Because some workplaces might be opening up again soon. I mean, is it the case that most work experience will be remote? Will there be opportunities to get work experience in a real life building? What can kids do to get experience now while things are still a bit COVID-y? Sorry, Ryan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, happy to. It comes back to the first point I made at the very beginning of the evening. I think you have to be proactive, and I think whilst we will eventually return to physical work experience, and hopefully sooner rather than later, I think for the remainder of this academic year, it's very likely to be remote and virtual experience. So what I would say is be proactive and take advantage of those companies that do offer virtual work experience. I would say, if you don't know if a company does or doesn't, and you're interested in what that company does do, then contact the company, visit their website, find an address and email them, talk to your school, see if they have a list of organizations that are offering virtual work experience. Keep your CV up to date as well, so that if an offer does come along, then you can take advantage of that offer. I think really what we're now seeing is lots of companies offering virtual work experience. So Pam, who couldn't make it, her company offers a virtual work experience program. Accenture, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, they definitely all offer virtual work experience. And related to virtual work experience, universities offer virtual open days, colleges offer virtual open days. So take advantage of that while it exists, and then be ready to take advantage of physical opportunities when they do emerge.
Yeah, I would second all of that. I think even when things return to normal in inverted commas, this method of work experience virtually will continue. And actually, there have been some really positive things that have come about from that. Places that traditionally have never been able to accept work experience students because either they're dealing with sensitive commercial things or perhaps, you know, industrial things, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, all these sort of areas like laboratories and some sectors where there's sort of high tech work going on, or any kind of health and safety risk. A lot of places have closed doors really to students, but actually through virtual work experience, these things have been opened up, and also they've been able to take more numbers if it's virtual, rather than just saying we can only take one person. They can maybe take 10 because you know, people can log on and they can participate. So it's still a relatively new thing, and I don't think anyone would claim that all virtual work experiences, you know, are fantastic, because we've only kind of had a year to really get into them, but they are really starting to develop. And actually, it's a fantastic way of learning digital skills yourself as a teen, to actually you know, participate in a placement like that, because you will learn a lot. You might not think it, but even the process of learning how to use the system and logging on and talking to people and becoming more familiar with sort of the tech way of behaving and talking and the sort of the etiquette around it, I guess, which adults are getting used to as well. It's all a fantastic skill set. So I would kind of echo what Ryan was saying at the beginning, that rather than you know, wait for a placement to come along, there's absolutely nothing to stop you emailing a company, phoning them, using their inquiry form on a website, which I've done before with students in school. You know, got them to complete it and just send an inquiry form and ask for a work experience placement. They can only say no.
Yeah, and on that, actually, like, how can you, if you're on a site where you can see a lot of different remote work experience opportunities advertised, how can you tell which will be a really valuable one for you and which might not be? Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, there are, I think, as we've all kind of learned to function in the virtual world, we've also started to see what quality might look like in a virtual world. So some things that you can always kind of watch out for. Is it a two-way experience? So is there interaction between you as the young person and the employer? Is there an opportunity for live engagement, really? So making sure that not everything is pre-recorded. Is it interactive? Are you going to be set purposeful real world tasks to have to complete by deadlines? Will you be sharing work back with the employer and getting feedback on it, just like you would do in the physical world? Will you meet a variety of different individuals with different job roles, different levels of seniority within the organization? Will you be able to tour different departments? Will you get that kind of insight that you would look for? And crucially, at the end of the experience, what kind of feedback will you get from the employer, and how will you recognize that you've participated in that experience? Will there be a certificate? What will it be? So I think just thinking through some of those questions, having those questions to hand while you're reading up on an offer, I think is probably the best advice I could give. Alongside, make sure that you have your up-to-date CV, so that you often have to apply for a virtual work experience. So make sure you've got your up-to-date kind of CV ready to send in, so that you know why you want to take part in the experience.
And do you think, I mean, is it fine to just, if you can't really tell from a description, is it fine to email the company and ask these questions yourself?
Absolutely. In fact, that would probably go in your favor, because you're asking the right questions. I think what businesses love, what educators love, is young people who ask questions. So please do ask the questions. Make sure you've done your research first, and that you couldn't find the answer out online anyway. But then ask those questions, absolutely. And also, for the parents on the call, also worth looking into the safeguarding arrangements around the online interactive nature of it. So just making sure that all the appropriate safeguards are in place.
Yeah. Mark, would
Yeah,
you
and
have
I
any?
think I was just going to say, I think the research side is really important, because we get employers saying to us, time and again, the worst thing is if they just get this kind of general, generic email or message saying, can I have a placement with you? And maybe it's just a kind of dear sir, madam, and they've kind of not taken any time to individualize the approach, to find out somebody's name, to make some personal reference to that business within. It only needs 2 or 3 lines to say, I noticed on your website that you're involved in this, or I was reading in the local paper that you're building a load of houses, and I'm really interested in construction. Whatever, it doesn't take much, but I think that research is really important. And I would say it's it's a lot better to go for quality rather than quantity, and send out a dozen targeted emails or letters than 50 generic dear sir, madams, and businesses will really like that. It doesn't mean that they'll accept you and they'll just say yeah, sure, but they're more likely to respond and either kind of send apologies, if you like, and say they'd love to help, or perhaps even signpost them somewhere else and say, I know someone who is looking for a person, and who would take you on. Because you've made that effort, you will find that others will respond. They won't all, so I think you'd have to be mindful of a lot of non-responses, but that's the nature of the game.
Yeah, totally. And kind of on the kind of note of work experience, and looking at the past year, where I guess before a lot of these remote packages opened up, there was a kind of a bit of a gap, like a bit of a stage where there were perhaps fewer opportunities. Would you have any either kind of advice or reassurance for kids who feel really worried that the time where they would have been doing work experience, or they would have even had like an actual job? Anyone who's worried about having a gap in their CV from the lockdown times?
Yeah, I mean, I was on a really interesting call last week with a large company, and their recruitment team was talking, and I'm sure this won't be symptomatic of every single company, but I think it's probably fairly widespread from other anecdotal evidence. And they were saying, we're well aware that over the last year, young people will not have been able to do lots of things, the kind of things they would have normally done. We have been in this situation as well, so we understand that. But we will still be looking for something that person has done, even if it's just sitting at home researching things, watching videos, learning something, doing something different, so that they have something to talk about. And the last thing that they were saying is wanting a young person to say, well, I haven't really done anything over the last year because of COVID, and that's kind of not going to cut it, really. I think employers are very understanding of the situation because they're in it themselves, but they will expect something to have been done, and something proactive.
And I suppose if you're sitting there now thinking, well, what could I do? I haven't contacted companies. Well, of course you can, and you can follow everything that Mark just said. The other thing you could potentially have a look at is the My Week of Work resources on the Careers and Enterprise Company website. Series of kind of pre-recorded lessons, which will just give you an insight into the world of work. So you'll hear from different employers. You'll also get to explore skills. You'll explore issues like mental health in the workplace. You'll visit and hear from colleagues that work in different sectors, and there's learning tasks to be completed as well. So that might be a starting point for you to begin your exploration.
Nice one. And on that same note, just because I know that it's a worry for a lot of teens, if some teens didn't get the results that they feel that they might have been able to achieve if exams had been happening last year, and even if they're worried about getting not the results that they could have in a normal year this year as well. I know it's hard to predict the future, and you guys don't speak for all employers, but do you have any kind of reassurance or advice on how you think employers will be approaching any kind of exam results which have been awarded between 2020 and 21? I know it's a hard question, but
yeah. I mean, I think to all of the young people kind of watching, I think you should still really value the qualification and the grade that you do get. There will be opportunities for you to retake or take an exam in the autumn term if that's the route you wanted to go down. But from the point of view of an employer, I think employers will be very understanding of the situation. They know what you've gone through because they've gone through it as well. So they'll be understanding of it. I think that the main thing to take away is what Mark said, that they will look for you to have done something. So yes, you've completed all your assignments, you've got a grade for all of your subjects, but what else have you done? What have you done to make yourself stand out from the crowd in this time? Whether that's extra research, whether it's virtual work experience, whether it's university tours, what is it you would say if you were asked that question? What else have you done? And if you can answer that with a few examples of things that you have been able to do, then I think employers will see that not only did you get grades, but you also did things during this time when other people may have just sat back and not done anything. So it's another kind of testament to your character, really.
Yeah, and I think certainly a lot of the bigger companies, they're not as struck on exam grades as they used to be, and I'd have to say that carefully because obviously they're still important. But you know, a lot of employers are realizing that there's more to it, and that actually young people have a lot of abilities that don't come through exam results, and that they need other ways of displaying them. So interview practices have changed a lot. Assessment centres are quite a big thing now. A lot of companies have their own initial assessments and recruitment processes and exams in inverted commas that they might set that they feel is more appropriate to them. So all of that stands in the favour of the applicant, because it's trying to give a sort of a more rounded opportunity for people to be successful in their applications.
Yeah, that sounds good. So there's still, in spite of all the challenges, there are still plenty of opportunities, like, is what you're saying. And grades weren't absolutely everything before anyway, but yeah, as Ryan says, there will still be opportunities to prove yourself in the form of exams if that is what you really want to do. And kind of on the notes of work experience and kind of deciding what you want to do as well, there was a good question a few minutes ago from one of our teens asking, so I kind of the opposite problem to if you've got no idea what you want to do, but if you have loads of interests and you kind of wish you could have 10 lives and have loads of different careers, how do you decide your first one? How do you decide what to do next? It's a good problem to have, I think, but
yeah, it is, and it's I always find it great if someone has loads of ideas. I think it's fantastic. It's better having loads than kind of you know, just a few that you kind of haven't thought an awful lot about, and maybe part of you is closed off to other things. I think if you're open-minded about all of those options, it's great. The chances are that there's the gut feeling comes into it about what you would really do. If you were going to literally just do that tried and tested method of getting a piece of paper and numbering them 1 to 10, and if you had to prioritize, there will be a reason why you put something at number 1. There'll be a reason why you put something at number 2. If you imagine being in a situation where you have to choose, and you can test yourself like that and just say, well, okay, if I have to put these 1 to 10, then how would I do it? You'll be able to do it, and then you could get to the, well, why have I put that first? What's the reason? And that might need a little bit more thinking. But I think it's an interesting challenge to have, trying to unpick those things. And I think it's also worth saying that it's very, very rare that someone goes into a job and stays in that job. They will have a number of job changes, and it can take quite a while before someone settles into what they really like, and they're kind of on a career journey. And often it's not until later on in someone's life that they become comfortable in where they are and they've really found their niche. And sometimes that's by choice. You choose to move job because you find out that something isn't what you thought it was. Sometimes it's not by choice, and it is through, unfortunately, through redundancy or companies closing or whatever. But often good things can come out of that because it sometimes pushes you to try those other things, and you're maybe forced into a situation. So lots of different things can happen.
Yeah, and yeah, Ryan, you go.
Yeah, no, I was gonna agree with Mark, and just I think the key thing there is why. So why is it that you like all of these things? Is there something that actually connects several of them together? If you unpick why you like them, is there a particular skill? Is it a particular way of working? Is it a particular environment? And an interesting way to then go and explore that is on the National Careers Service website, there is an explore feature. So if you go to the explore section, you can type in a job that you might be interested in. And then on the right hand side, it shows you other related jobs that you might like to consider. So you can think about job sectors and job families as well.
Awesome. And then I guess a related but different problem is, what would you say to a teen who's saying that, like, I absolutely 100% want to do this career now? Is there a risk that, like, is it a risk to put all your eggs in one basket when you're a teen? Or do you think if you've got a passion, you should just go for it at the time? What do you think?
I think it's fairly unusual, I think. I mean, there are obviously young people who have those definite ideas. In my experience, they were in the minority. And what I would do would be to ask the usual questions and really kind of put that challenge in there about, well, why are you so sort of fixed on that idea? And actually, a lot of those teens come up with really brilliant answers, and they kind of, they've thought about it, and they do have a real focus, which is well grounded in evidence and research. And I think in that case, and some of those young people have gone on, they do go on to do those jobs. So I think if there's if it's not really the focus for that person, then they'll probably work it out themselves fairly quickly without anybody having to to tell them.
Yeah, I would agree. If you really know what you want to do, then and you've asked all of the right questions and you keep getting the same answer, then do everything you possibly can to make that dream a reality. Get all of the experiences, get all of the qualifications, do all of the extra stuff that you can do to make yourself stand out and be the best possible person at on that course, in that job role, whatever it may be. But with a slight reality check that you also might want to have a backup plan in place, so that if something does go wrong, like if life throws a spanner in the works for whatever reason, even if it's just a temporary spanner in the works, then you need to have that backup plan. You need to know what your reserve options are, and that might be taking a sideward step, it might be taking a forward step, just in a slightly different direction, but a well-researched backup plan, I think, is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see that we've got absolutely loads of questions from our audience now. So I've got some more questions to ask, but I think I'll just leave it for us to switch over now. So I'll just bring in Emily from My Tutor, who's been keeping her eye on the questions. And yeah, she'll kick us off.
Yeah, hi everyone. I feel like I've learned so much just hiding away in this Zoom chat. So one of the questions that's come in is, how do we choose our future career when we don't know all the jobs available to us? It's a good one, because obviously there are so many jobs out there that you don't even know exist until you're in the working world.
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's not necessarily about trying to fixate on what job you want to do. You can think about a job sector, a job family. You can think about a problem that you want to solve. I don't think you should fixate on a job, because, as you rightly say, the world is changing fast, and jobs that exist now, some of them didn't exist 10 years ago, and it's very likely that in 10 years time a whole new raft of jobs will also exist. So the way you prepare for that is by making sure you've got the skills that you'll need to kind of flourish in those jobs. So some of what they might call the softer skills bad title, but things like teamwork, problem solving, communication, and you can kind of explore those in a variety of ways, but gather some evidence that just proves you're developing those skills. And what you'll find is those skills will apply in a variety of different job roles.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would say is that you can just use a process of elimination, which is quite useful. If you look at sectors and job families rather than jobs, you've got a much smaller number to deal with. So different websites will have they'll categorize them slightly differently, and there might be 20 sectors on one website, there might be 26 on another, but you'll get the idea. And actually, most people can discount a lot of them just from that gut feeling, and actually be left with, even if you're left with 4 or 5 sectors, that's still cutting it down an awful lot, and you'll have zeroed down on something where maybe that's enough. You haven't got that specific job, but actually for the time being, you've got an area, you've got a general interest, and for now, that'll do.
Nice, thank you. So basically focus on the sector, not just the job role. So we also had a couple questions come in about CVs. You guys mentioned CVs a couple of times. So one question was, how do you actually make your CV good if you don't have much experience? But another one is, are there any websites or tools that you can recommend to help actually create the CV itself?
Yeah, there's that was probably the question that I had most, particularly from the students who were looking for apprenticeships. So they're in a different situation really to say year 11 to applying to sixth form, and to an extent people applying for full-time courses at university, though obviously there's still a competitive element to that. But if you're applying for apprenticeships or training schemes, you're in that competitive sort of job market. So it is important to find things to put on your CV. I think some people panic that they have to have a whole sort of who's who of activities that they've done that really kind of, is absolutely amazing and stunning. It doesn't need to be. And actually, if you put too much on a CV, it puts an employer off. Most of the time, I don't think I've ever come across anybody who can't think of something once you've had a little bit of digging and diving and talking about it and looking at a few examples. And that's often what you need. You just need your mind to start thinking, and you'll remember things that you've done. And it could be weekend things. It could be sort of voluntary activity. It could be something that the school organised that you took part in, or residential or whatever. It could be helping a family member or someone with their job on a weekend, or doing gardening. Often it's things that you do that you don't think would go on a CV because you think, well, they're not important enough, or it's not impressive enough. It's not about that. It's just an employer being genuinely interested in finding out about you. So put on there what you do and what you like and what you're proud of. And it gives a starting point for an interview. So the CV doesn't get you the job. Hopefully it will get you an interview, and then you've got a basis on which to talk to the employer.
Nice, thank you. I love that advice. So another question came from Emma. She specifically is interested in clinical psychology, but I think that this question applies to a lot of different areas. How can she make herself stand out, as it's such a competitive sector? And does going to a better university increase her chance of landing a dream position?
How can you stand out? I think you research the job role of a clinical psychologist. You look at some of the things that they do and their skill sets, and then you start to match your skills with those. So when have you problem solved? When have you communicated? And be able to have kind of high quality examples that you can bring in there. Have you ever spoken to a clinical psychologist? If not, could you? And then could you document that so that you've taken the time proactively to speak to a clinical psychologist? If you can't speak to a clinical psychologist, can you speak to an admissions tutor at a university to find out about the course, and can you note that down? So can you really do your research and then start to match your skills to the skills that you're going to need? Can you give kind of examples of where you've developed those skills? And then if you've done a work experience and it's not in clinical psychology, can you relate some of the things you've done on that work experience to clinical psychology? So for example, if I wanted to be a surgeon and I'd done a work experience in a garage as a mechanic, I might be able to say, well, I can follow instructions, I can act with precision, and I can apply technical knowledge. So you can link what you've done previously to what you're wanting to do next, as long as you do your research, really, and then do everything you can to stand out and stand out as an individual, as a person, not just as the job role. So what else do you do beyond your job for your own kind of well-being? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? And really make something of those as well.
Nice, thank you for that. And yeah, I think that can be applied to lots of different competitive areas. And then for the second part of that question, which is going to an amazing university going to land me my dream role, do either of you have a view on that, how important the actual institution itself is?
I think probably not as much as it used to be, I guess. I mean, I think everybody knows, that there are things like league tables, there are things like Russell Group universities, and there are correspondingly different grades required to get into those universities, and we all know that. I think what's important is the end product. It's what you can do when you come out of that university. And a lot of graduates, a lot of employers will say that up to a third of graduates just don't have the relevant skills that they need, that they haven't made the best use of their time at university, and that's regardless of what university they've been to. So 1/3 of graduates, people who leave with a degree, aren't job ready. So that's a tremendous sort of waste of time from an employer's point of view. So what's important is that you make sure when you leave university, if that's where you go, that you're not one of those people. And it's not about spending all of your 3, 4 or 5 years avidly kind of getting work experience and doing this, that and the other, to fill up your CV, because then obviously you'll miss part of the experience of being there. It's that balance of always thinking, well, at some point I'll be leaving here, and I just need to make sure that I'll be okay, that I'll be in a position where I can find what I want to do, that I've made some good contacts, I've got a bit of a network going there, I've used all my months off for my holidays and summer and this, that and the other sensibly. Maybe started up a LinkedIn profile, which you can do as a teenager. There's no reason why you can't start a LinkedIn profile if you're in year 10 or 11. And to just be mindful of it, that at some point you'll be going out there into the world of work, and you just want to be ready for it.
And I think just on that as well, don't always just look at the university ranking in league tables, but also look at the particular departments and where they sit within different league tables as well. So it may be that there's an amazing department, might be one of the top 5 in the country, but it might not be in one of the top 5 universities. So do your research. Great
advice, yeah. And then this was a question which was specifically directed at MyTutor, but I will let whoever wants to answer it. How can you ace a job interview, or perhaps practice or gain the skills to really smash an interview?
I mean, I can answer it, but
because you employ people, so you've done lots of interviews.
Well, I've employed people.
Yeah, we've interviewed people.
We have done interviews, you're right. How can you, so having been on both sides, I think just really be yourself in any interview. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's really true in that, in fact, I even got a job previously that was the wrong job for me earlier in my career. And it's because I acted like I thought that person, I behaved in a way that I thought was right for that role, and it convinced the people, and then it ended up being really the wrong role for me. So I would just say really be true to yourself, because that's how you'll show employers whether you are really right for that role or not. Like, I know it sounds that you think when you're looking for a job, you think, I want to get a job, but it's not every job that you apply for will be like the right one for you. So if you really are your authentic self in every interview, then you're more likely to find a job that will be a really good start in your career. I don't know if Mark and Ryan, if you would agree or disagree, because I'm not really a professional in this.
Yeah, I would totally agree, and you're right. It is a cliche thing about being yourself, but it's so true. And I think also it's the sort of thing where there's very few people who absolutely ace their first interview, because it's like anything else. If it's the first time, it's going to be new territory. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be difficult, and you can put yourself under an awful lot of stress from something that you haven't done before. But as soon as you have your second one, you'll already feel more comfortable because you've been there before. You kind of know the ropes a little bit. Once you've had your third one, you're then becoming a little bit of an expert. So I think it's one of these things where you can only prepare so far, because you know ultimately you have to go through it. I think the other thing to remember is that you're not there to kind of bow to the interviewer and kind of sort of do everything that you can to be offered the job. You're there to think, is this right for me? You know, do I want this job? Because the employer obviously wants to employ someone. They need someone, otherwise they wouldn't be talking to me. But actually, I don't have to take this job if this conversation isn't right, and actually by the end of it doesn't seem right for me. You know, you can be in a position where you actually politely decline a job, and that can, you know, that can really confirm that you are in control of what you do, and you can be very sort of rightfully happy with taking a position like that, because you've made a decision that actually following that conversation something's not right.
I guess that's where both asking questions is so valuable, because firstly it makes you look engaged to the employer, and it also helps you find out what that employer will be like. So it's both beneficial for you, and it makes you look good just in case you do want the job.
Absolutely. And don't ask a question that you could have found the answer to by doing a bit of research in advance. Otherwise, you're kind of undermining yourself. And just as a kind of a practical tip, you will have seen a person's specification when you've applied for a job. You will have submitted some form of application, probably with some kind of supporting statement. I would just suggest you constantly reread through your supporting statement and be ready to answer questions with examples, so that you can really bring to life the things you have done. And I would say don't feel compelled to have a perfect answer for every question. It doesn't really exist.
Nice, thanks guys. And I know obviously we touched a bit before on if you've got loads and loads of interests, how you narrow them down, but someone in the Q&A has said, what do you do if you have narrowed it down but they're just completely different? The examples they gave were music, engineering and medicine. Obviously if you study music, medicine might be a struggle afterwards. So what would your advice be then?
Oh, that's a tricky one without knowing. Yeah, see, in my head, I'm going straight into sort of careers mode and wanting to think, you know, well, what are you doing? What are your abilities in each one? How are you doing in your subjects? Yeah, I can go through a whole load of questions to sort of start narrowing it down. I guess the only thing, if it really came down to it, and it really they all were genuinely equal, you kind of wouldn't have much choice but to find some sort of experience or placement or contact with each one. And I've seen people use Twitter and LinkedIn to literally just put a question out there and say, you know, I'm stuck between these three things. What do you think? Or, you know, I'm really interested in music, but I know it's a really tricky time at the moment for the industry. So what do people think? And you can kind of put it out there, and I've seen these threads before, and it's really interesting just seeing how people respond and what sort of advice people give, and things that you probably never even thought about because you go through the same things again and again in your head. But actually, once you open it out to other people, there are sort of things that you've never thought of before. So if social media is a little bit too wide, you know, maybe just use the people around you, and again, that tried and tested method of just writing things down. Keep a little career book, and just kind of make a note of things, because if you've got lots of ideas, you can sort of get confused about things. So keep your lists and write them down.
Nice, thank you. And then one last question. Let me put one more because we don't really have time for many more. Would you say that work experience is important for getting into university? Does it set you apart?
I think work experience is important if you can get it. If you can't get work experience, then I think it's really important that you kind of just demonstrate some of the other things that you've done, particularly in these times. But work experience really, I think, shows that you can develop an understanding of working life, and that you've got an insight into that, what it's like to get up early, get on a bus, whatever it might be, walk into a building that you've never been in before, work with people you've never met before, etc., etc. As you kind of get older, you're starting to connect your work experience with what it is you might want to do next. So you're getting an insight into jobs, job roles, companies that work in the sector that you're interested in. And that can help to make you stand out, because it gives you things to talk about, particularly if the university is going to interview you, or if they're not interviewing you, then something you can put in your personal statement. So if you can get work experience, I definitely think it's valuable.
Yeah, and also, you know, things like voluntary work, just because we're all at home at the moment, you can still do online voluntary work. And we've got a school at the moment that's linking in with a local charity that runs residential homes, and they've set their older people's residential homes, and they've set up computer systems in there so that the residents can actually talk to the students online like we are now. And so there are sixth form volunteers who are getting involved in that and doing that from home, you know, which is absolutely fantastic. And so they're doing something really, really useful, gaining lots of experience, supporting the community, and doing that all from home. So there will be things like that going on, I'm sure, in your area.
Yeah, and there are things like virtual expeditions as well that you can do. So all of those things that you would normally try to do to really stand out, there are versions now that exist in the virtual world.
Awesome, thank you guys. Well, that brings us neatly on to 8 p.m. Just quickly, for the person who loved medicine and music, we've had a suggestion in the comments that you should go into art therapy. Not a bad shout. I'll hand back to Mariota, but thanks everyone.
Thank you, Emily. And on that question as well, I don't know if this makes me sound old, but one of the members of Noah and the Whale, which was a very successful band, then went back to his job as a doctor and works with some of my friends in a hospital in London. So as Mark was saying before, you can absolutely career switch more than once in your career. But so just thank you so much, Mark and Ryan, for all the advice you've given tonight. And thank you so much to all of our really lovely, lovely audience who've given so many questions and engaged so much. I feel like this has been a super helpful event. And yeah, as we said before as well, this event has been recorded, and we'll upload it to our YouTube channel tomorrow, so you can watch again and take extra notes or share it with your friends. So yeah, thanks Mark, thanks Ryan, and have a good evening, everyone.